It looks like the age of the virtual console is coming to an end as remakes and remasters come into play. And we're going to take a look at this article written by the gamer to discuss about why is that the case. Let's have a read. Virtual console is long dead in the world of remasters and remakes, and this was written by Jade King 4 days ago. Let's read. A few weeks ago, Nintendo Shadow dropped Pikmin 1 and 2 HD onto the eShop alongside a demo for Pikmin 4. Suddenly, two forgotten GameCube classics had a new home on the Switch, with a handful of modern bells and whistles. Except there was a catch. They cost $30 each. Following in the footsteps of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, this is yet another premium release of an older title with minimal upgrades at best in a past life. Would have occupied cheaper prices like the Wii U or 3DS Virtual Console. In an age where remasters and remakes are bound to attract millions of potential players, even at a higher price point, the incentive to present past entries in the library is a more playable fashion just doesn't make financial sense anymore. Nintendo's excessive greed has led to a stance that is simply anti-preservation, as it chooses which games are worth remastering for modern audiences, while countless others are left behind for no good reason. But it's difficult to blame them when gamers are happy enough to cough up pennies at a time. Every time, excuse me. I was excited as Pikmin 1 and 2 were confirmed to be making a comeback, especially since the only way to play them right now is either through GameCube, Wii, or emulating them off my back. Those these classics are still receiving sequels and remain popular properties, and it sucks that experimenting with their origins is bound to another sunk cost for gamers wanting to cut up with their history. Like this. This is the Super Mario 3D All Stars remake thing that they did for the Wii and the Switch. Super Mario 3D All Stars, which compiled Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, was rolled out as a limited release for some godforsaken region. Three games we wanted desperately to play on modern hardware was finally available, but an inflated price point with a weird artificial scarcity that Nintendo wanted to enforce for no reason beyond highlighting assumed value. Ditto the original Fire Emblem, which briefly came to the eShop, then was removed 4 months later. It's gross and lessens the prestige of its own legacy while planting an irrational fear in our minds that these classic games we want to remain available will suddenly vanish without a trace. Metroid Prime Remaster and Pikmin 1 and 2 thankfully didn't pull this trick, but there is nothing stopping Nintendo from doing this again. Given previous success, it definitely will. I'm not against the idea of remasters and remakes, and it's been a long, excuse me, I'm not against the idea of remasters and remakes, and have long been a victim of our own nostalgia when it comes to revisiting games from my youth. Last month saw Capcom finally release Ghost Trick Phantom Detective on modern platforms, but this was a cult puzzle classic previously confined to the Nintendo DS and older versions of iOS, not a platforming juggernaut that sold millions. Remakes for the series like Resident Evil have sound logic too, and all proved themselves with excellent gameplay styles worthy interpretations of existing characters we know and love. The original games are still available on digital storefronts too, with no effort made to remove them or suddenly label them as somehow definitive. We've reached a point where games we consider retro quotation marks form consoles such as PS2 and GameCube are basically competent enough in comparison to modern ones where remasters can jazz up textures. improve the resolution, and boost performance to justify asking prices that quickly stack up the cost. I'm more than happy to pay the price in most cases, and so are you if current trends are an indication. But it sucks that incentives that once hoped to preserve the classics we grew up playing are being replaced with far more expensive alternatives, and I agree with this. Look at what's going on with the pricing market. I would compile dozens of PS1 classics on the PS3 and PS Vita, none of which ever cost more than $15 or so. And the same went for the Game Boy, NES, and SNES titles and 3DS. It seemed it seemed like the companies behind them understood their respective values, but this has been long wiped away thanks to the advent of subscription services and the ability to produce remasters with a similar amount of effort for 10 times the profit. This isn't going to change, and Nintendo isn't going to suddenly change its tune, and start throwing GameCube gems into the Nintendo Switch online when the alternative far better serves the bottom line. It's the same for every major company out there, and affordable and accessible games preservation will forever play a second fiddle to capitalism as long as we keep playing along. And that is today's article for this story. Now, let's go back and talk about a few points in this article because it's very important when we read that part. Okay. When the article mentioned preservation, that's huge. That's a huge word in today's market of video game because preservation for Nintendo, they don't do it. Um, for example, the reason why they said emulation is because Nintendo has a bad habit of not preserving their games. For example, we recently saw in I believe August, no, not August, but in March 2023 this year, March to this year, that they closed down the 3DS shop and I believe the Wii U shop as well. And that's been a story. Now, doesn't look like a story for those of you who just started gaming as a Nintendo player. However, it's a big story when we talk about the classic games and digital only games because on emulation you can emulate the games that people put up online. That's why I'm a fan of emulation. What happens if a store closes? I mean, like a digital store closing. You never see those games again unless they are emulated through like Dolphin or like NES 9X, excuse me, SNES 9X, and all those emulators that you see out there in the market today, and they are free, by the way. So I'd rather be an emulator player than somebody who plays a digital only game, especially if especially digital only games if the digital store closes. That's why I'm a huge fan of emulation. So, and Nintendo has been notorious for not being a good company when it comes to emulation and preservation. They don't do that stuff, unfortunately. And that's going to do it today's article for the Virtual Console. Later today, we have a few articles talking about major remake potential, and there's been leaks about this game called Red Dead Redemption Remastered. Speaking of remastered, speaking of remasters in this article, so we will take a look at that story later on today. Make sure you guys tune in for that because that one is going to be a big one. I really think this remaster of what this news of Red Dead Redemption is big story. So we will see you guys for that one in our next article reading. Enjoy.